Hi, everyone. Welcome to another KE Report featured webinar. This webinar we are hosting with Eskay Mining. My name is Cory Fleck. I'm your host over at the KE Report, also your host and moderator here for this webinar. This webinar is being produced in conjunction with Focus Communications. Now, I do have on this webinar Quinton Hennigh, Technical Advisor and Director, as well as John DeDecker, Vice President of Exploration. John, Quinton, I will get you guys to fire up your videos and your audios here. Now, Eskay Mining is traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol ESK and on the OTCQX under the symbol ESKYF. This presentation is going to be very much an overview of the company, a bit of history on the project, and a big focus on the exploration plans for this year. You can all send in your questions. Please use the chat or Q&A feature. I will be monitoring those throughout the webinar and interjecting questions when they fit in with the slide deck, as well as a bit of a Q&A at the end of this webinar. If you're watching the replay of the webinar and you have any follow-up questions, you can always email me, fleck@kereport.com, and I will get the team over at Eskay Mining to address those in subsequent interviews. John, Quinton, take it away, guys. Let's learn a little bit more about Eskay Mining, please.
Thank you very much, Corey. Look, I have my camera on, but the little window shows up black right now, so I don't know if you can see me or not.
You're coming through to me, Quinton.
Okay, cool. All right, so it's just on my end. Look, I'm going to introduce the company, and then John's going to really give you the meat on the technical side, especially about what we're planning on doing this season. We literally just finished our final planning session yesterday in preparation for the mobilization to site. You'll see here shortly, John and team are actually headed to site literally within hours now. So it's exciting to be able to tell you this story. Got to start with the disclaimer, of course. This is part of the updated corporate deck and will be posted on our website. You guys are really getting to see this thing for the first time. The current stock price, it's taken a bit of a hit, so that's a bit dated. In the past couple of weeks, it's been a rout, guys. I don't know what to tell folks, but it is very disheartening when the mining industry kind of gets throttle like this alongside the greater markets, really no fault of our own. This is an exceptional story. I think as the gold space rebounds, like most of us know it will, on the back of the next round of quantitative easing or whatever they're going to throw at us after they destroy the economy, I think gold will do very well. And this story, above all, should be one of those that really comes out of the gate in very good shape. So, if anything, it's a buying opportunity. You can see here we got 170 million shares out, fully dilute to a little over 200. The market cap is actually around, I think today's price is more like 330 or 40, something like that. We just did a financing, so we do have about 9.6 million in the bank. We have quite a few warrants that expire that were part of financings done in 2020 that expire here in June and then in August. And those will bring in quite a few proceeds that will round out the balance of the monies that are needed for this season's drilling. Okay, you can see here the team. Mac Balcom is CEO. You have several directors, all very close to Mac. Rob, in particular, has taken on a role as the CFO as well here. This needs to be updated, it looks like. But myself, I'm a technical advisor. Tom Weiss, who I've worked with for many years, he was chief geophysicist at Newmont. He is running our geophysics, and there is a lot of geophysical basis for the targets we're testing here. So it's very critical to have somebody like him. Delight to work with him. And then John DeDecker. John is postdoc from Colorado School of Mines. I've known John now for about 5 or 6 years. He did work with me previously on some projects, but when it came time to look for a quality management we could bring into this story, somebody who knows the VMS exploration strategy and really could implement things, John was the perfect candidate. We're delighted to have him as our Vice President of Exploration. You can see we've added some new members to our Geologic team. These are folks mainly out of the Colorado School of Mines. We have Ben Freeman, Samuel Pierre. We have Jesse Hill, and then Ori Wyatt. Basically, a first top-notch team, crackerjack team is what I meant to say, that can undertake this exploration program. I think this year, above last year, we do have more breadth to our staff, and that's important because we have a lot of boots on the ground work we want to get done. You'll see here shortly. And these guys like Ben are very, very sharp in the field at getting out, prospecting, identifying targets very quickly, and helping us move those forward to drill targets, to drill stage. So it's a delight to have the new team. We are exploring 4 precious metal-rich VMS targets. There are other targets in the region around here. We've got porphyries, porphyry copper gold. We've got the very high-grade epizonal style of mineralization at the Brucejack mine. But we are looking for that Eskay Creek style of mineralization on our 52,600 hectare property. So we have a commanding position within the Golden Triangle, and we have most of the prospective ground for these VMS targets, and that's very important. Anybody that knows VMS targets know they occur in camps, and we basically have the prospective ground that surrounds the old Eskay Creek mine. And we have probably 85% of that prospective ground for VMS exploration. We're located in BC in the Golden Triangle, mining friendly. You can see we have a lot of infrastructure. One thing I might add is that Seabridge and Eskay have worked out agreement to start building the road across the property that goes over to Seabridge's KSM project. And that work is beginning this year. It was supposed to begin last year. COVID and some other issues delayed it, but this year it's going to begin in earnest. It is a 3-stage program. We're going to see stage 1 go in, and it goes right next to our Sibalulu area. So a lot of people ask, why aren't you drilling at Sibalulu? Why? Well, we're going to wait until we have that road in place, and that's going to make exploration in that area very, very cheap going forward. So that's part of the strategy we have here. Look, I'm going to talk about a couple more things and hand it off to John here. Look, we do have about 526 square kilometers of ground. I think it's very important for people to understand we are right in the middle of a large number of world-class deposits of various types. Now, Eskay Creek, which is in the north, is a historic VMS, a very high-grade VMS deposit. It was mined by Homestake, then Barrick. Now it belongs to Skeena. Skeena is looking to develop the lower grades, not necessarily low grade, but lower grade parts of the system, which mount to over 5 million ounces of gold. It will be a large scale mine. I think the PFS that they delivered last year indicates it should produce north of 400,000 ounces of gold. So that's a major project in its own right. But you also have the Kerr Sulfurettes Mitchell porphyry field off to the east. That is one of, if not the biggest, porphyry copper gold systems in North America. It is not currently developed, but like I said, Seabridge is now making advancements to move that towards production. You have the Treaty Creek discovery up there in the kind of the northeast. Treaty Creek, of course, is Tudor. They've reached an amazing milestone of something around 25 or 30 million ounces, I believe, in resource at present. And then you have the Brucejack mine, which is now Newcrest. Newcrest owns that, and it's an extremely high-grade bulk underground mine that is on a system that's, we'll call it a little different than just about anything on Earth. It's a kind of an epizonal. It's debatable, but it's an epizonal or perhaps even epithermal gold system, very high-grade in nature. We are going to focus on the VMS. So guys, you can see Eskay Creek. There's a belt that trends north-south through here. It basically is a paleograben that would have been on the seafloor. What does that mean? It means that there was a valley present in the seafloor environment, and it was along that valley that we had a number of VMS systems established. Okay, so on the seafloor right now, you can go down in a submarine, you can see black smokers in clusters in certain areas like the Juan de Fuca Ridge, and they occur in discrete structural zones, usually valleys, like underlain by faulting and stuff like that, that allows the hot waters to come to surface. Okay, so we think based on the geology and the distribution of of the prospects that we found, we think we have about 85% of the prospective ground for VMS on our property. That's very, very important. Last year, we recognized some very high quality targets at Vermilion and Scarlet Ridge. I will let John talk about those here in a minute. But, even to this day, the point is we are turning up new targets, identifying new drill targets and new occurrences of these VMS. Even now, even though this camp has been in operation now for 30 odd years. Okay, John, I will let you direct it. If you want me to move the slides, I can, or you can do it yourself.
I've got it. Thank you, Quinton. So as Quinton was discussing, Eskay is looking for our precious metal VMS deposits, and this chart is one that I've had in several of my technical presentations, and it just shows the deposit tonnage on the horizontal axis and millions of metric tons and gold grade on the vertical axis. And what we want to focus on is Eskay Creek VMS deposit there in the red oval. That was, when it was operating, the highest grade gold mine on the planet. And we can see about these high grade VMS deposits, they're relatively modest tonnage, but they're very high grade, which means, with a small amount of mining or tonnage, you can get quite a bit of gold. As you see, over 100 tons of gold came from the Eskay Creek deposit itself. Another thing I would like to point out is a lot of these other gold-rich VMS deposits, like the Horn deposit and the Bousquet deposit, those are in the Abitibi district, and this is a well-known district within Eastern Canada, and a case in point that these VMS deposits do occur in clusters. So it would be very unusual for something like Eskay Creek to be by itself. It's just really not geologically plausible that a world-class deposit would form by itself like that. So I kind of want to go over the history of the exploration on the property. People have been working up here for about 120 years or so. Cumberland is the first VMS prospect found on our property, and at that point people really didn't know what VMS was. However, there was some gold exploration going on in the early 20th century in earnest, starting with Tom Mackay in the 1930s, and here's the first one that identified the prospectivity of the Eskay Creek area itself. But it wasn't until 1988 that the actual deposit itself was found with the famous hole 109. So that was in 1988, and that really got a lot of the exploration in this area going in earnest by that point. And from 1990 to 2006, there's been quite a bit of exploration on our property. A lot of the showings that we have on this map and that we're exploring today were located in the early 1990s. However, there really was a big disconnect between prospecting versus doing economic geology, where you actually understand the hydrothermal system and the stratigraphy that you're dealing with to truly vector towards these deposits. That was something that really wasn't understood very well with previous exploration programs. I'd say that started to change in 2017 and 2018 when Silver Standard optioned the SIB property and conducted a 20,000 meter drill program. This again was focusing on the contact mudstone or the Eskay Creek horizon, which you may have heard me discuss in some of my technical presentations. However, what we found is that a lot of these showings do not occur just in the contact mudstone or that Eskay Creek horizon. And that was actually a big reason a lot of the showings on our property really weren't considered worth following up on, because they just didn't fit the Eskay Creek model. Well, that's part of our new interpretation, is that, we're not really looking for an Eskay Creek model. We're looking for a precious metal rich VMS. So we need the VMS model, and that really opens up the prospectivity when you really have a comprehensive understanding of just how widespread these VMS deposits can be. So what we've found is that they're located within the Hazelton group stratigraphy. Again, this has been the most prospective stratigraphy for the past 30 years, but it really wasn't until the 2020 program that we understood that we're dealing with stacked VMS deposits that occur both within the upper Hazelton group, which you see in the yellow, as well as the lower Hazelton group, which is in the green on this map. And that these deposits occur along the limbs of anticlines or big folds in the Earth's crust. And this is very important to understand exactly how these deposits are distributed on the property and how to trace the right stratigraphy to find more of these deposits.
So, John, I think this is a key point, is because you guys are called Eskay mining, a lot of people are just carrying it over to the Eskay Creek property and saying, is this another Eskay Creek? What I'm hearing is that this is somewhat different geology. When it comes to a VMS deposit, then what do you like to see in the drill core? What are the elements? What else can you tell us about when you know you're onto a VMS deposit?
Well, the biggest vector is hydrothermal alteration. And that's something
Can you simplify that for us all, please?
Oh, well, when a hydrothermal or a hot fluid flows through a rock, it's in chemical disequilibrium. But so it basically means it's going to chemically interact with that rock. I mean, perhaps a lot of people know about putting baking soda and vinegar together, and there's a reaction. Well, you can have the similar sort of mineral reactions or chemical reactions within a rock. And it's these really hot fluids that form the VMS deposit that do this hydrothermal alteration. And typically the alteration associated with these deposits has a lot larger footprint than the actual deposit itself. So it allows you to vector towards these deposits just by looking at the hydrothermal alteration. So that's one thing we can do to vector towards a deposit in the field. Again, a lot of the work that we've been doing over the past few years has been putting together a better stratigraphic framework and correcting some of the geological inconsistencies on previous maps. But we've really come up with a good, solid exploration model now. And as I'll explain, we're going to be doing a quite extensive mapping program to really resolve some of the issues on the existing geological maps.
Okay, thank you.
So, and this is what I've been mentioning over the last 2 years, 3 years or so. We've done a pretty thorough data review on the property, and that's when I noticed that, you know, some of the work that had been done in the past was suspect at best, and we needed to actually get out there and look at some of the historic drill core. And once I did that, a picture started to emerge that we've got several favorable horizons for these VMS deposits. It's not just Eskay Creek, but there's actually 6 prospective horizons that we've identified so far within the Hazelton group. And that was one of the first big revelations from our data review and historic core logging. But it was also during that process that we identified the TV and Jeff showings as probably the lowest hanging fruit on the property. They certainly seem to be textbook VMS deposits. And that was the model that we went in exploring these things with, was that they were a stacked VMS system. And something that we found looking at these is that they exhibit a lot of what we want to see in a VMS. As you had asked, Cory, we were looking for hydrothermal alteration, but we're also looking for the right types of volcanic rocks, the right types of sedimentary rocks that tell us we're in a seafloor position. And then we want to know if we're next to what we call a synvolcanic feeder structure. This is a fault zone that would have fed the hydrothermal system that created these VMS deposits. And there's a lot of geological detail that goes into synthesizing all of this and identifying the right paleo environment. But what we found at TV and Jeff is, yes, we do have all the hallmarks of a VMS deposit. And it's starting to look like we've actually got quite a large VMS system. It's not just TV and Jeff, but the entire region surrounding these appears to be one larger hydrothermal system. So that's, sort of what the past few years of exploration really developed, was this district scale throughout the entire Hazelton Group exploration model for these VMS deposits, and particularly at TV and Jeff, seems to have paid off, because we've had some quite good drill intercepts from particularly the 2021 program, which we did 23,500 meters between TV and Jeff, with some other drilling at the C10 and Vermilion prospects further to the south. We also conducted a property-wide SkyTIM survey. This was something we did a limited survey of 2020 of just the TV and Jeff region, but we saw that the data was showing us some pretty good evidence that we have conductivity anomalies associated with these hydrothermal systems, as well as the data highlighting a lot of the major geological structures. And then a lot of our follow-up work in 2020 followed up on our 2020 BLEG survey, or bulk leach extractable gold survey, which identified several good prospects around the property noted in these reds and the purple color. Even the oranges on this map to the right are pretty good showings. And this is something we started to explore last year at Scarlet Ridge and Vermilion. And we're going to be doing it even more this year, as I'll talk about. We're going to try to visit every single one of these BLEG anomalies this year.
Okay, so one other point here, John, is that a lot of that drilling last year was focused at TV and Jeff. How much was put into Vermilion and the other target?
We got about 1,000 meters over
so
at Vermilion, and about 2,500 meters or so over at C10, which we gained valuable information from those that we'll be able to use this year to help improve our understanding of that area. Down there.
Just so people know, we hit a brick wall at mid-September. It started snowing to the point where we couldn't carry on, so we had to cut the program short. We were aiming for 30,000 meters. We got a little under 2,400 or 24,000 done.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
So, I'd say TV and Jeff are bona fide volcanogenic massive sulfide mineralization. We can see these cross sections that I have here, and if people have been paying attention to the press releases, we have multiple stratigraphic horizons between TV and Jeff, where we have starting up at the top at TV, we have our upper stockwork zone, which underlies a newly discovered massive sulfide intervals. But this stockwork zone is where a lot of our really long intervals of gold and quite high-grade silver mineralization are located. And it's that stockwork zone that would be feeding the seafloor mineralization. And then we have a lower massive sulfide zone that would be over to the left, lower left side of this diagram of TV. And we have good evidence now that's actually underlain by another stockwork system that we will be exploring more this year. And then going to Jeff, which is about 1.4 kilometers north of TV, we have an upper stockwork zone. It would be the upper right part of this image with Jeff. And we can stratigraphically correlate that with the lower zone at TV. Those are in the exact same rocks right there. So we know that Jeff is stratigraphically below TV, which actually opens up prospectivity for more feeder style mineralization down section at TV, as well as more mineralization up section at Jeff that would be correlative with the upper zone at TV. But we've had pretty consistent long intervals of gold and silver grade at TV. And then at Jeff, we have these pods of very high grade gold, bonanza grade gold. As you can see, this large sample over here, this has 79.2 grams per ton gold and 203 grams per ton silver over about half a meter or so, 60 centimeters. And we have several intercepts like that at Jeff. And it's important to note that both of these deposits are still open along strike, down dip, and up section. And that's really the name of the game for what we're going to be doing this year.
And John, real quick, I saw a question come in. As you're drilling an intersected an exhalative strata bound massive sulfide, why don't you point that out to folks while we're on that slide?
Yep. So yes, we have. Let me make sure this whiteboard, if I can draw.
Yeah, you'll be able to draw.
Okay. Get the pencil. Doesn't seem to be doing anything.
Where are you trying to draw here?
On the TV.
Okay.
But to answer the question, we encountered two exhalative horizons at TV, one overlying the upper stockwork zone, that upper right part of the TV. We intercepted our exhalative horizon there, as well as our second one on that lower massive sulfide zone at TV. And in both cases, there are stockwork feeder systems feeding into these exhalative horizons. Curiously, at Jeff, we really haven't encountered any massive sulfide or unequivocal exhalative seafloor horizon massive sulfide yet. To date, all the drilling's really intercepted intensely altered stockwork style mineralization, which means possibly that we're still we need to find where the actual venting occurred for this deposit. It could be a long strike or down dip. We have to think in 3 dimensions when we're exploring for these.
And while we're on this topic, I'm going to throw one more thing out. So at TV, what you were saying, and just a little bit more detail there. If you look at the cross section, you can see some of the uppermost holes where they've hit red, and even white. White is actually the highest grade. That is where that exhalative part of the system has been identified. Okay, and it was identified late in the season. It was actually encountered in some of the last holes. They were stepping up the hill as they drilled last year, and those were some of the last holes that were drilled early September. What's important about that exhalative horizon is wide open down dip along strike. That was really a discovery that was made almost at the end of the season and was not followed up on yet. So I think there's a very good chance we can expand upon that exhalative horizon. And I think it should extend, knowing the nature of VMS, it should extend well down dip and in and out of the section. So that's an exciting target in its own right. Then at Jeff, the thing I would comment is, John's point about it all being stockwork to this point is accurate. That begs the question, where is the VMS? Where's the exhalative part of the system? And what's intriguing is at Jeff, there are some very, very high grades, some relatively small or narrow intercepts in the stockwork that are very high grade. There's a few that are bigger. There was, I think, a 36-meter interval of a little over 10 grams in the 2020 season. Okay, now that's that gold rich, that bonanza grade stuff. If we find the exhalative to that, then that likely, in my view, could be, analogous to the Eskay Creek type deposit. Either one of these, okay? They're very high grade. Eskay Creek, don't forget, it had lots of silver. It was 46 gram gold, but it also had 2.2 kilograms of silver per ton, life of mine. Okay, look at the numbers on these tables. You can see right away that we have very, very high grades, predominantly in the stockwork. A little bit of these numbers are from the VMS that was encountered late in the season. But it's telling us that the grade is certainly, the grade potential is certainly there. And that once we find and kind of flesh out that exhalative part of the system, we could end up finding an Eskay Creek too.
So Quinton, to that point too, another question just came in asking if you have any drill pads at Jeff that are targeting the exhalatives that you weren't able to.
I'll tell you what, I'm not going to spoil John's punchline. Okay. He has some slides later that show people we're going to drill the absolute crap out of this place. Okay.
How about big
Oh,
picture? Any
there it
chance
is.
of combining TV and Jeff here?
Right there, this slide, it's a little fuzzy there, John. I don't know. We might have to tweak the pixel thing on it, but this slide speaks to it. So, John, take her away. Show people what we're going to do.
Yep. So yeah, as Quinton noticed, this slide is a bit blurry for some reason, but what our program this season is doing is to really expand the strike length of exploration at both TV and Jeff. As I mentioned, and Quinton mentioned, they're both open along strike, down dip, up and down stratigraphic section. So what we've done, part of the 2021 program was to do an extensive soil sampling grid over TV and Jeff, and to try to connect these two. And our press release in late March highlighted a lot of this, the data, in particular what this figure is showing up in this north part of Jeff, which is this northern box, or this upper white box on this figure. There's quite a large anomaly of a silver anomaly in the soil samples here that not only encompasses Jeff, but extends to the south of Jeff and well to the north of Jeff. And then as you'll see on the next few slides, we actually have our IP, or induced polarization data from the 2020 season, combined with these soil samples and the stratigraphic information we've been able to develop from our drill program over the last 2 years, and really being able to define some targets using these data. So again, we're going to be using resistivity anomalies from our IP survey because what we can see is that resistivity is really tracking with hydrothermal alteration. So again, that hydrothermal alteration vector I talked about is really showing up on our resistivity data, and as well as our pathfinder elements. So silver, arsenic, and mercury are associated with gold and silver mineralization, not only at TV and Jeff and every other VMS showing on our property, but also at Eskay Creek. These are pathfinder elements for our precious metal mineralization. And then again, our SkyTim survey has been very helpful for putting a lot of the geological context to the areas that we don't have adequate mapping yet.
John, before you leave that, I want to talk about it, okay? Because I think it's really important people understand what we're trying to accomplish here. Okay, so the white box in the north, that's Jeff. The white box in the south, that's TV. You can see there's about 2 kilometers between them. So there's a lot of open ground between. There's also soils that extend to the south of TV, but also to the north of Jeff. So in total, we did soils over about 5.5 or 6 kilometers of strike along this eastern side of the anticline, and it's showing us lots of anomalism. All those little black lines that you see there are planned drill holes that John and his team has sorted out and we reviewed yesterday. Those are the drill holes that will be completed, or hopefully mostly or all this season. What they are is they're fences of holes. Okay, so the holes are angled predominantly back to the west, and we drill a succession of holes such that there's they overlap one another. Think of them like fence pickets, but slightly tilted on their side. That way, we make sure that we catch any mineralization that's dipping, to the east through this area. And if we hit on these areas to the north of Jeff, in between TV and Jeff, to the south, and we can demonstrate that this 5 or 6 kilometers has more mineralization in it than just the TV and Jeff systems. To put it in context, that is nearly twice the size of the footprint of the Eskay Creek system. Okay, if you go to Skeena's maps, you can look at their website. You can see the distribution of gold deposits that they have up and down the west side of the anticline, up further to the north. It's about 13K to the north of here, and you'll see that the footprint of mineralization is about maybe 3.5 kilometers along strike. It's in pods. It's not all one continuous sheet by any stretch. There's several pods that are all kind of strung together like a string of pearls, and that's very typical of VMS deposits. We think we have a similar string of pearls here. Those little blister-like features where you see reds and oranges pop up, those are SkyTem anomalies that we think are conductive features likely associated with sulfide. Okay, you can see there's a great number of these little blisters or pimples popping up there, and we want to test every single one of them. Basically, if we find that there's multiple VMS, multiple pods and whatnot up and down this strike, yeah, this could be a very, very good ending. Another point, last point I will make here: most people don't know the history of Eskay Creek. They don't even really know about the mine. It was the highest grade mine on Earth, guys, for a long time. It was the highest grade operating mine, a gold mine on planet Earth. It had a head grade of 46 grams life of mine. It also had 2.2 kilograms of silver life of mine, but the tonnage was quite small. It was at maybe 2.5 million tons at the end of the day. It produced, I think, 3.3 million ounces of gold and many, like 160 million ounces of silver, if memory serves. But look, Skeena now has 40 or 50 million tons of material that surrounds that higher grade deposit. And if you look at that holistically, like look at the whole system, yes, the Eskay Creek deposit, the original wonderful cherry of a deposit. It was in there in the midst of all of that lower grade stuff. But collectively today, I mean, that's remarkable. If you take Skeena's plus the historic, you've got probably 10 million ounces of gold mine resource and reserves, and then umpteen, I don't know how many ounces of silver. It's got to be 200 or 300 million ounces of silver. We could have the very same thing here, guys. We're swinging for the fence. We're going to drill up and down the strike of this thing for 5 or 6 kilometers. We are going to try to demonstrate we have such a target right here.
Thank you, Quinton. That is very interesting. Let me jump in here real quick because, look, there are a lot of comparisons being made, and quite frankly, it was grade, too, that was carrying Eskay Creek. In terms of the grade that you guys have drilled, you already mentioned some of the silver. How has the grade compared then, Quinton?
We see at TV, it seems to be differentially high in silver. Okay, you see really high numbers like bonanza levels. In fact, I think 5,000 ppm, 5 kilograms of silver in one of the intervals last year. Up at Jeff, we see really super high grade gold. John showed a picture of 79 gram sample there. Interestingly, you see the same kind of phenomenon. If you go to Skeena's data and you look at Eskay Creek for what it is, it was not one homogeneous deposit. Okay, not by any stretch. There were places that were silver rich. Mm-hmm. There were places that were gold rich. There were places where silver and gold overlap. We're seeing the same kind of thing here. Very, very little difference between this and Eskay Creek. I think we're going to see the same phenomena here.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Yeah. Let's get into the drill program because we have a lot of questions on that as well.
Yep. So I won't belabor the geological models too much, but after the last 2 years of drilling, we've been able to put together good geological models of both TV and Jeff. We're located, as I said, along our synvolcanic fault structure. We've got our mineralization, our hydrothermal alteration, our volcanic rocks, everything that we want to see to have a VMS deposit. And now we have these models that's going to help us extrapolate the geology along strike into areas that we have not explored. And part of the way we're doing that is with our induced polarization data. And here, what we see on the left is our IP line from 7900 north at Jeff. This is resistivity. Again, I'm choosing resistivity because that's really highlighting our hydrothermal alteration, which if you see these yellow blobs that are kind of hugging all the drill holes in both of these figures, that is what we've modeled as intense hydrothermal alteration. We use our geochemical data to basically quantify the alteration intensity. And what we see is that hydrothermal alteration correlates with resistivity anomalies as well as our mineralization or our gold grade. And we see this where we have our current drilling, but then we can extrapolate that out to where we don't have any drill holes, like here north of TV. These are drill holes or cross sections with these black lines on it. Those are planned drill holes well to the north of TV that will be intercepting these resistivity anomalies. And late in this season, we were drilling TV 2181. We did intercept sulfide stock work within that. Unfortunately, didn't run with any appreciable gold or silver. However, it was quite high in arsenic. So that's one of our Pathfinder elements. And if we look up section from TV 2181 here on this left-hand image, if you go just up to the upper left of that hole, we have a planned drill hole that's intercepting a resistivity anomaly that is just up dip from TV 2181. And then, as I said, there's a whole host of other resistivity anomalies, most of which lie along strike from known mineralization. Same thing with Jeff right here. These are both to the south of Jeff. And interestingly, what we see, these little dots that are up to the tops of these images, those are our soil samples taken on the surface. And what we see in a lot of cases is that our higher grade soil anomalies correspond to our resistivity anomalies. So that again is lending more support to our target criteria of going after combination of soil anomalies, our resistivity anomalies, and looking at our SkyTEM data along strike and really being able to correlate these anomalies with known mineralization, and it continues along strike. This is a 4.5 kilometer strike length that we'll be testing with drilling, as well as getting some more refined soil information even further outboard from TV and Jeff. But I think it's really compelling that we see these resistivity anomalies continuing along strike, and these very large strike lengths of very strong silver anomalies, as well as arsenic and mercury anomalies as well. So going back to Quinton's point, if we're going to be testing this full strike length, and there's the potential that we could have a footprint of a large hydrothermal system that is twice the footprint of the Eskay Creek deposit. And that's really the primary goal of this season, is to push the extents of this area, because it seems to be quite well mineralized. And we have a lot of surface samples that we reported on in March that show gold grade from rock samples, as well as intense hydrothermal alteration to the north of Jeff. What we also see with our soil data is that these Pathfinder anomalies aren't closed in at all. So we have to go in and do more soil sampling this year and really fill in the gaps in our data and try to close in these anomalies. And one thing I'd like to point out, if you look at the SkyTEM image up towards the very top, just to the left of the kind of arsenic ppm scale bar, there's a big red conductive protrusion going into the center of the field near the top. That is another large SkyTEM anomaly that seems to be very much of the same morphology as what we're seeing at TV and Jeff. And I think it's interesting, some of the fault zones that we're starting to delineate as our feeder structures have the same orientation, or basically bisect right down the middle of these larger protrusion-shaped SkyTEM anomalies. So we'll be doing quite a bit of soil sampling, actually collecting soil over a 9 kilometer strike length to see just how big this system actually is. And we're going to be flexible enough with our drilling that if we see things that we like well to the north of Jeff with our handheld XRF and our soil data and field prospecting, we'll be able to drill targets, newly identified targets this year.
Okay, that's key. And I think you just answered a number of questions that came in with that, with the last couple of slides, is that the soil anomalies, soil samples are lining up with a lot of the SkyTem work, right? So this is going to be a key targeting tool that's also continuing this year.
Yeah, exactly. And and again, note it lines up with our IP data as well.
We have about 10 minutes left here, guys. John, if you could go through Scarlet Ridge and Vermilion and the rest of this real quick. Let's leave about 5 minutes. Cory can ask
for a
us some
couple of
quick
questions here. A lot of people are wondering big picture stuff too. So let's talk about some of these other targets, and then we'll get into it.
I'll run through this very quickly. We have a couple of bigger picture targets we're going after, Scarlet Ridge and Vermilion. So Scarlet Ridge is up in the northeastern Bleg anomalies, and then Vermilion we drilled last year is down in the south. So I'll go over to Scarlet Ridge. This is just a phenomenal area of just outcropping VMS mineralization. It's quite poorly explored. There was some drilling done to the south west back in 1990, but in short, we're seeing the same geological features and rock types and alteration that we expect to have associated with VMS. And importantly, these rocks at Scarlet Ridge are in the upper Hazelton group, so they are at the Eskay Creek stratigraphic level. So we'll be doing an extensive mapping program at Scarlet Ridge, basically mapping out this entire eastern anticline. The existing geologic maps and interpretations are incorrect based on more detailed investigations from last season, and we'll be doing a very rigorous mapping program at Scarlet Ridge, pretty much an entire 8-kilometer of strike length. And if we identify any targets during this mapping program, we will be drilling those this year, reserving approximately 5,000 meters or so if we find targets that we really find compelling this year. There's been some exploration in the past further to the southwest of Scarlet Ridge, where there's quite a number of gold-bearing surface samples, as well as drill holes called the AP drill holes, which did intercept some gold mineralization over a few meters. It's important to note a lot of this area was glaciated when it was explored previously, and there's a lot of newly exposed ground because of glacial retreat, as you can kind of see right here with this unexplored area right here is newly exposed because of recent glacial retreat. So we have quite a large strike length over at Scarlet Ridge on the eastern anticline. That's going to be probably the biggest focus for our mapping efforts. We're also going to be doing more mapping at Vermilion and the Spearhead area, because we do have a 6-kilometer trend of Bleg anomalies. It's a very rugged area, very high elevation, so a short time frame within which to explore this area. And we'll be doing more characterization of the geology and identifying more VMS style targets in the field for this year. But our drilling will mostly be focused at TV and Jeff and at Scarlet Ridge. We probably won't be doing drilling at Vermilion this year unless we see something that's extremely compelling for us. But nonetheless, it's a very prospective area.
So outside of TV and Jeff, any of these new areas, do you need drill permits or are permits in place?
We're fully permitted now.
Okay.
At Scarlet Ridge, Vermilion, TV and Jeff, the whole Cory area, we are fully permitted on the entire property, actually. So we can pretty much drill wherever we want to now, which really opens up our flexibility to do what we want. So
okay, let's talk about this district scale potential. Also tie it into key catalysts then for this year, your main goals around the drilling for this year's program.
Well, this year's program, TV and Jeff, we're going to be doing a minimum of 25,000 meters at TV and Jeff. We really want to hit that full 4.5 kilometer or more strike length and really start to define the true size of this system. This is, as big as it seems to be with our soil and IP data, then that could be a major discovery. So that's our big focus, as well as developing some of this other area right around TV and Jeff. We have other targets. On the west side of the anticline, the Excelsior targets and some other compelling bleg and soil anomalies down there that we'll be getting boots on the ground here within a couple of weeks, actually, and doing prospecting to develop more early season targets. So that's an important thing to note. We are mobilizing, and my team, advanced team, we're leaving on Sunday to go up to the field. We'll be at camp by May 20th, and we'll have our boots on the ground doing this prospecting, getting our drill pads and everything refurbished and new ones built by the end of the month. We've had a helicopter flyover that shows that our lower elevation areas are already snow-free. So that's our huge plus to getting, basically a 3-week head start on drilling compared to last year, which is going to allow us to be this ambitious. And then again, that mapping programs will help us develop new targets around the property with a solid geological interpretation. And then we're going to have a dedicated prospecting team that will go around and visit all of these bleg anomalies and really start to characterize new emerging targets this season. So there's going to be a lot of new target development, as well as just pushing the boundaries on TV and Jeff very aggressively.
Okay, so it sounds like a lot of other exploration, true exploration as well. Since you are planning on starting this drill program a bit earlier, Quinton or John, assay turnaround time. There's been a dozen questions come in.
Let's talk about that. That's a good question there, Cory, because it was a challenge last year, and it's really been a challenge for the past 2 years. Fortunately, COVID hassles are lifting. I'm not going to say that it's going to be easier here. Now the biggest challenge is you have a lot of companies well cashed up who have aggressive programs in the Golden Triangle and elsewhere in this region, and those labs are going to have a lot of samples coming in. So two of the things we've talked about. Firstly, we're going to as we saw and sample the core, we're going to identify the most promising parts of drill holes and submit those samples in as a priority. Like in all of the samples we ship, we're going to send them in priority. We're also, secondly, going to work with the lab to make sure they don't just pile the samples up in their yard in a chaotic mix like they did last year. And that was the other thing that really hamstrung the assay turnaround, was that we were getting little bits and pieces of assays from, a multitude of drill holes, and we weren't getting the entire string of assays for any given hole so that we could report it. And it took a while to kind of get the lab, work with the lab to get that all coordinated. So I think between sending out samples in a priority form from the camp and then working with the lab to make sure they don't get, they don't just get heaved in a pile. Those are the two most important things. Now, best laid plans, right? Look, we will do our darndest to make sure that this doesn't happen, but labs are labs, and unfortunately, things can happen. So hopefully we can avert most of them, but no promises.
Okay, fair enough. Quinton, wrap us up then with what your goals are. You're the technical advisor here in terms of the drill program for this year. John's laid out the program where it's focus a lot on TV and Jeff, but then there's all these other areas that you might drill, that you need to do soil samples on. Where do you want the company to end this year after the exploration program?
Yeah, after this program, obviously at TV and Jeff, we want to see more pods or bodies of mineralization up and down that corridor that we talked about earlier. If we do, then I think people will recognize, we do have the potential to find an Eskay Creek scale system. It would also be nice, to see that high grade kind of crystallize. We did see a snippet of it in some of the drill holes last year. If we see, as we chase that thing down, dipping along strike, if we see that exhalative horizon where there was very high grade expand, that would be a huge win. But in short, we want to find a replicate or even bigger of Eskay Creek. So there's the first objective, and that would be through the TV Jeff corridor. Second objective is to identify new VMS systems, and Scarlet Ridge obviously is a very important area for us. It was found late in the season last year, but with our plans with Ben and his team and John supervising and getting out there and hitting it hard, I think we can get a few drill holes in this year that hopefully point to another VMS discovery up there. down at Excelsior, which we didn't talk too much about, but is on the west side of the anticline, directly opposite of TV and Jeff. It looks like we have another TV and Jeff system forming there. We plan to do soils up and down that area. Take TV and Jeff and duplicate it. Okay, that's another possible win for us. There's other areas that are going to prospect, like John mentioned, down there at Vermilion and C10. A lot of people say, why aren't you more aggressive down there? Well, that country is very high. Okay, so it's not practical to get a huge amount of work done early in the season. You have to wait until the snow melts. They will do their darndest once the snow melts to get up there, evaluate targets, maybe test one or two, but that's unfortunately got to be a lesser priority given that we have a lot of low-hanging fruit to tackle right now.
Okay, guys, thank you very much for your time. Everybody, if you have follow-up questions, there's an email address there that you can email. You can also email me directly, fleck@kereport.com. Sounds like this is going to be a very busy year for the company with drills hitting the ground. Sounds like as soon as possible. So, look, a lot of targets being tested, a lot of exploration potential here, and that at least has been something that the market has shown some interest in for these tough market times. So, Quinton, John, thank you again very much for your time, guys. I'm sure we'll be doing another one or two of these throughout the year as some drill results start to come in. But in the meantime, keep us all up to date on the news. And everybody who tuned in, thank you all for taking time out of your day and for sending in your questions.
Thank you, Cory.
Thanks.